The air in Sigil Masa is thick with the smell of roasted chickpeas and the sharp, metallic tang of the coppersmiths. It is the year 1850, and the market is a chaotic sea of indigo robes and shouting men. I stand near the edge of the northern gate, watching the light catch the red dust of the Moroccan streets. To anyone else, this is just a busy morning, but to me, it feels like the edge of the world. My fingers brush against the leather waterskins hanging from my saddle. I check them for the third time, pressing my thumb against the seams to ensure there is no hint of a leak. A single lost drop of water is a tragedy, but a single lost skin is a death sentence. I can feel the weight of the gold dinars pulling at my belt. It is a heavy, comforting pressure, but it is also a target. In the markets, wealth brings many eyes, and not all of them are friendly. I look past the stalls and the colourful awnings toward the horizon. The sky is a pale, dusty blue, but where the land meets the air, there is only a vast, shimmering orange. It looks beautiful from here, like a sea of crushed velvet. But I know what lies beneath that colour. I know that the horizon does not hold gold. It holds a silence so deep, it can drive a man mad. I take a breath, tightening my grip on my staff, and prepare to step out of the city and into the emptiness. The scent of the caravan camp is something I will never forget. It is a heavy, suffocating mix of dry camel hair, sun-baked dust, and the pungent aroma of unwashed wool. I walk among the 60 dromedaries, my boots sinking into the fine silt of the courtyard. My task is not merely to lead, but to balance. Every pound must be accounted for. If a load is too heavy on one side, the camel will stumble in the soft sand, and a stumbling camel is a broken spine. I watch the Berbers as they work. They move with a practiced, rhythmic grace, their voices rising in low, melodic chants that seem to soothe the restless animals. They are securing the heavy slabs of salt we brought from Taoudeni. These slabs are dense and unforgiving, wrapped tightly in coarse cloth to prevent them from crumbling. Next comes the silk, tucked into protected bundles, and then the grain, which must stay dry at all costs. I lean in to inspect a particularly large load, feeling the heat radiating from the animal's flank. I check the tension of the ropes, pulling at them until they groan. There is a precise physics to this survival. If the weight is distributed correctly, the caravan moves like a single, breathing organism. If I fail in this math, the desert will find the error and exploit it. The transition is subtle at first. We leave the last oasis behind, passing through the final patches of scrubland where the hardy desert bushes still cling to the soil. The green of the vegetation begins to thin, then vanishes entirely. Suddenly, the world opens up, and the ground beneath our feet changes. We have reached the Erg Chebi. The landscape is no longer flat or predictable. It has become a series of intimidating, undulating waves of sand that stretch toward the sky. The midday sun has arrived, and it is not a light, but a physical weight pressing down on my shoulders. It feels as though the heat is trying to force its way into my lungs with every breath. I squint against the glare, watching the way the light dances off the crests of the dunes, creating illusions of water that vanish as soon as you look directly at them. I pull my headcloth tighter around my face. My mind begins the daily dangerous habit of calculation. I look at the slope of the next dune and estimate the distance to the next well. I know the map by heart, but the shifting sands make the landmarks feel untrustworthy. Every step forward feels like we are climbing out of a bowl and into a furnace, moving deeper into a world that has no interest in our survival. The heat haze begins to shimmer on the horizon, turning the world into a liquid, trembling mess. It is hard to tell where the sand ends and the sky begins. I find myself staring at a patch of blue far in the distance, a patch that looks like a cool, deep lake nestled between two dunes. My throat tightens at the sight. For a moment, the mind forgets the logic of the desert and reaches for the impossible. I know it is a lie. I know it is only light playing tricks on a dying sense. But the heart is a foolish thing. It wants the water so badly that it begins to believe in the ghost. I pull my water skin close, but it is nearly empty. When I press it to my lips, I find only a thin, bitter residue. A white salt crust has begun to form on my parched lips, a stinging reminder that my body is losing the battle to stay hydrated. Every swallow feels like sandpaper against my throat. The sun is directly overhead now, a white, blinding eye that refuses to blink. It does not just shine, it strikes. I watch the men in the caravan. They move like ghosts, their heads bowed low, their eyes fixed on the heels of the person in front of them. We do not speak. To speak is to lose moisture. To speak is to waste the precious energy we have left. We simply exist in this furnace, moving through a landscape that seems to be melting. I keep my eyes on the ground, avoiding the false lakes and the dancing lights, because I know that if I look at the horizon for too long, I might finally decide to follow the mirage into the heat. The sun finally sinks, and with it, the world undergoes a violent transformation. The furnace of the afternoon vanishes, replaced by a sudden, bone-chilling drop in temperature. The air loses its weight, becoming thin and sharp. I pull my heavy wool cloak tighter around my shoulders, feeling the chill seep into my very bones. It is a strange, rhythmic cycle, this desert life. We live in a world of two extremes, with no middle ground to rest in. The moon is a thin sliver tonight, providing little light, so we turn our eyes upward. I look for the North Star, the steady anchor in a sea of moving sand. It is the only thing in this wasteland that does not shift or deceive. By its position, I can keep our heading true, ensuring we do not wander in circles through the Erg Chebi. We move in a long, dark line, a procession of shadows guided by the celestial map above us. At 2 a.m, a profound, eerie silence settles over the dunes. There is no wind, no insect song, no sound of life. There is only the rhythmic, heavy thud of camel hooves and the soft rustle of our breathing. It is a silence so heavy it feels like it could crush you. In these hours, the desert feels less like a place and more like a vast, breathing creature. We are merely tiny, insignificant travelers passing through its ribs, hoping it does not notice us. I keep my gaze fixed on the stars, finding a quiet, lonely comfort in their cold, distant light. The silence is broken not by a sound, but by a change in the light. The stars do not fade, they are smothered. The sky turns a bruised, dusty ochre, a color that signals the arrival of the harmattan. I feel the first gust hit my face, a dry, hot breath that carries the scent of old stone. Before I can even call out a warning, the wind turns into a roar. The world disappears. The horizon is swallowed by a blinding, abrasive wall of grit and noise. It is as if the desert itself has decided to rise up and consume us. I can no longer see the camel in front of me, let alone the stars. I drop to my knees, shielding my eyes with my forearms, but the sand finds its way through every gap in my clothing. It feels like thousands of tiny needles scouring my skin, stripping away the moisture and the warmth. I struggle to reach the nearest dromedary, my hands clawing at the air. I must tie them down, must secure the heavy salt crates before the wind turns them into projectiles. Every movement is a desperate, blind fight. The noise is constant, a high, shrieking whistle that fills my ears until I can no longer hear my own thoughts. I can feel the sand filling my mouth and nose, a gritty, suffocating presence. I pull my headcloth tight, pressing my face into the fabric, and pray that the wind does not decide to bury us where we stand. The storm eventually recedes, leaving a world that feels strangely, unnervingly still. As the dust settles, a sound cuts through the silence, sharper than the wind. It is the frantic, wet sound of tearing leather. I scramble toward the rear of the line, my lungs still burning from the grit. A young dromedary has stumbled over a buried rock, and in its fall, it has crushed one of our primary water skins. I reach the animal just as the last of the liquid begins to soak into the thirsty sand. The heavy goat skin is sliced open, a jagged wound weeping the precious moisture we need to survive the next 3 days. I fall to my knees, my hands shaking as I fumble for the small jar of pine resin we carry for repairs. I try to press the thick, sticky substance into the tear, but the sand is everywhere. It clings to the resin, turning my desperate patch into a useless, gritty paste. Behind me, I hear the breathing of the junior traders. It is not the steady rhythm of men resting, but the shallow, jagged gasps of the panicked. They are looking at the empty skin, then at the horizon, and then at me. They are waiting for a miracle. Or perhaps they are just waiting to see if I will break first. I do not look up. I keep my eyes fixed on the ruined leather, my fingers bleeding from the friction, knowing that every drop of water we lose is a minute stolen from our lives. We reach the coordinates of the waypoint by midday, driven by a desperation that feels like a physical ache in my joints. This well is marked on every map I possess, a reliable sanctuary in the heart of the Erg Chebi. I lead the way, my boots thudding heavily against the baked earth, expecting the sight of a dark pool or even a damp shadow at the bottom of the stones. Instead, we find only a hollow throat of dust. The well has been choked. A recent shift in the dunes has poured a mountain of fine, pale sand into the shaft, burying the water deep beneath a suffocating weight. I lean over the edge, peering down into the gloom, but there is nothing to see except the dried, cracked mud at the very bottom, looking like the skin of an ancient dead creature. A heavy silence falls over the men. It is not the silence of peace, but the silence of the exhausted, the kind that happens when hope is suddenly replaced by a cold, hollow weight in the stomach. I look at the faces of my traders. They do not ask how we will survive. They simply wait. I reach for my own canteen, my hand trembling slightly, and make the grim decision. We will ration the remaining drops to a single mouthful every sunrise and sunset. We will move through the night, and we will pray that the maps were not lying to us. The third night of rationing is a blur of exhaustion and delirium. My tongue feels like a piece of dry wood in my mouth, and the stars seem to spin in dizzying circles. But then, as the sun begins to crest the horizon, something changes. It is not a sight, not at first, but a scent. The wind shifts, carrying a smell that is entirely foreign to this wasteland. It is the scent of damp earth, of rotting vegetation, and of something sweet and heavy. I blink against the rising light, rubbing the salt from my eyes. There, on the far edge of the shimmering heat haze, is a smudge of color that does not belong to the desert. It is a deep, bruised green. I squint, leaning forward on my saddle, and see the unmistakable silhouette of palm fronds swaying against the pale sky. It is an oasis, a grove of life standing defiant against the emptiness. The effect on the caravan is instantaneous. The camels, sensing the change in the air, lift their heads and begin to move with a sudden, rhythmic energy, their heavy footsteps gaining a new purpose. The men, who had been slumped in their saddles like ghosts, begin to sit upright. There is no cheering, for we are too tired for such things, but there is a collective shift in the light of their eyes. We are no longer just surviving the desert. We are approaching the outskirts of Timbuktu, and the green is calling us home. The shadow of the city walls falls over us like a cool hand. As we pass through the heavy gates, the sounds of the desert are replaced by a chaotic symphony of life. There is the rhythmic hammer of coppersmiths, the shouts of merchants in the crowded souks, and the heavy, sweet smell of roasting meat and spices. I look up and see the great mosques, their mud brick architecture rising toward the sky in smooth earthen curves. The Sankore Mosque stands as a silent sentinel of clay and wood, its massive pillars looking as though they grew directly from the ground itself. I lead my lead camel toward a courtyard where a stone basin sits filled with water. When I finally press my face to the surface, the water is not just liquid, it is a miracle. It is cold, tasting faintly of minerals and deep earth. I drink until my stomach aches, feeling the life return to my limbs. Around me, the men are unburdening the dromedaries, the salt slabs and silk bundles being moved into the shade of the warehouses. Once the cargo is secured and the ledger is marked, I walk to the edge of the city walls. I look back toward the horizon. The desert is still there, vast and indifferent, stretching out in a sea of gold that shows no sign of having felt our passing. The sand dunes do not care that we survived them, and the sun still beats down on the empty expanse. We have brought our wealth into the safety of the walls, but I know the desert is simply waiting. It is a beautiful, hungry thing, and it remains exactly as we left it.